would just like to say that I would add to the various labels or various features that I consider Sylvia the poetess of the ocean. Sylvia Earle, that is. And of course, the heroine of the ocean.
Thank you. This is beautiful. Sam, you know how to sweep me off my flippers. In fact, all of you have this evening. And I really look forward to seeing all of you underwater somewhere. It's the best place to be. Sam is absolutely right. If you want to change the way somebody thinks about the ocean, go jump in the ocean. Well, I first jumped in the ocean more than 50 years ago. When you think about the way the world was at the time as compared to the way it is now, 50 years ago, it was before this image was possible. People in this room have grown up with this image. It's hard to imagine not having this as a part of our culture, a part of our understanding, to see ourselves in perspective, this tiny little blue dot in the vastness of the universe. I try to imagine if John F. Kennedy knew 50 years ago what we know today, that the ocean provides the underpinning of all that we hold near and dear. If he could see the changes that have taken place on the planet in half a century, to see the 90% loss of many of the fish, the turtles, and other ocean wildlife, if he could perceive and understand that we have the power through our actions to not just witness, but to be the underlying cause of the loss of about half the coral reefs, either the loss or the serious decline around the world in 50 years. To realize that 70%, more or less, of the oxygen in the atmosphere is generated by those little green and blue-green guys in the ocean that we call phytoplankton. And that since his famous moment in history 50 years ago, 40% of the phytoplankton is gone. Something we didn't know until 2010, when the analysis of data accumulated over the decades finally came into focus. If he could see that the burning of fossil fuels could lead to the release of so much excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that polar ice could melt with breathtaking speed, driving global warming, causing sea level to rise, changing the pH of the ocean to be more acidic. If he could have known what we now know, that the ocean, as Jean-Michel will underscore, the ocean is our life support system, that it doesn't matter what you care about, the economy, your health, security, life itself, if we fail to take care of the ocean, none of that matters. Oceans first, everything else follows, because the ocean drives the way the world works. If he had known all of these things, John F. Kennedy might have famously said, Sam, ask not what your ocean can do for you, ask what you can do for your ocean. Because that's where we are 50 years later. What can we do for the ocean? We drag things out of the ocean, we put things into the ocean, we take the ocean for granted, just as we have over the years. And now I need to figure out how to make this work. Think I can? Oh, maybe not. There. Thank you. So, we have seen so much in terms of changes in technology, so much so that, well, going back 50 years, we were still dreaming of going to the moon. Now we're dreaming not only of going to Mars, but maybe even terraforming Mars to make Mars more Earth-like. At the very time that we are witnessing and we are causing Marsiforming Earth. It would seem that we've been given directions to somehow do everything we can to change this planet to be more like the red planet. What are we thinking? on the land and in the sea, just burning through the assets as if they're infinite in their capacity to recover from whatever we do. I can almost forgive those who preceded us for some of the dastardly things that they've done to the little blue planet and that we're still doing, as long as they're ignorant of the consequences. But there's really little excuse for that today. Now we know. We know that the ocean gives us every breath we take. We just couldn't survive without the ocean driving the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the oxygen. I mean, the whole way the world works. Take away the ocean, you've got a planet a lot like Mars. So we either take care of it and give back to the ocean, or we will lose in the end. We have illuminated the earth through the burning of fossil fuels. Yes, we burned whale oil, and there might be a few little lights around the world if we were up in the sky able to look back, but our hunger for the fuels that drive our current society has a downside. And it's only now that we have the capacity to see it, to understand it, to realize the real cost of what we regard as cheap energy, that we're paying, and we will continue to pay, this famous image that just demonstrates the loss of polar ice in such a short period of time. Bad news for the critters in the high Arctic, bad news for all of us everywhere on the planet, because whatever happens to the Arctic, whatever happens to any part of the world, influences all of the world. I have a little home down in Florida as well as in California. Where are you, Sam? I look at this image of what it would look like with only 6 meters rise of sea level. My mom and dad's place that I currently hold near and dear is in the red zone up there near Tampa Bay. It's amazing to contemplate that we can visualize the possibility that places that are right on the coast today may be engulfed by the ocean by the end of this century, in the lifetime of people now alive. I could not imagine when I was a kid that we could lose coral reefs at the rate that we're seeing them disappear. But it's happening. Why is this not headline news in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, in The Economist? Why is it just in scientific journals? We need a better voice for the ocean. Are you listening, Jean-Michel? You are a voice for the ocean. But all of you need to chime in to share what you know with anybody you can catch, to change the way we think, set our priorities straight. The ocean fundamentally matters to everyone, everywhere, all the time. It's not something that we can put aside or take for granted. We certainly got a wake-up call this year with events in the Gulf of Mexico. Our capacity just to, through whatever events, and you can point fingers every which way, there are problems that have arisen as a consequence of our actions. Now, I love to go diving, as has been made clear, and I wished to be able to jump in a little submarine and zoom out and see what was going on in the Gulf of Mexico, but you know what? It's hard to find a submarine to just go to like Hertz or Avis and dial up a submarine. There just aren't that many of them. There just aren't. I mean, finally Alvin was able to get out and brave the winter weather, not the summer or the spring or summer weather, but the winter weather, to go out and check what it's like at, 5,000 feet. What a big deal it is if you're holding your breath. But 5,000 feet, that's not even as high as most airplanes fly. It isn't. I mean, we go 7 miles in the sky, not 1 mile. Where are the fleets of remotely operated vehicles and manned submersibles that complement the aircraft and the seacraft that go on the surface? I mean, what are we thinking? Why aren't we equipped to be able to go out there in teams of people to address wrongs when they happen, to size problems, to know what's actually happening today in 5,000, 4,000, 2,000, 1,500 feet of water, whatever it is, or full ocean depth. Only once in history has anybody been to full ocean depth, 7 miles. That was 1960. 1960, 50 years ago, actually 51 years ago. So there's something to be done, and here is a crowd of people able, if we're willing, to make a change. And it's fun. What can I say? Whatever your reasons for wanting to know the ocean, I mean, let's do it. The Russians have 2 submarines that can go to 6,500 feet. China is about to launch one, has launched it already, soon to go to 7,000 meters. 6,500 meters is the depth of the Mir subs that are owned by Russia. France has the Nautil that can go to 6,000 meters, a bit more than half the ocean's depth. And our dear Alvin at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is about to be upscaled, but not to go immediately down to 6,000 meters, but to be renovated to go back to 4,200 meters, its present rated depth. 1 Alvin, 2 Mirs, 1 little sub called the Sea Dragon that the Chinese have. I mean, this is a tiny fleet of systems that can go a little more than half the ocean's depth. Would you climb a mountain halfway and say that's enough? Especially when there are unique systems that we need to understand about how the planet works by going to full ocean depth. And what about the space in between the top and the bottom, the living ocean itself? Water is not just water, is not just water. The ocean is not just water plus salt. It's salt plus life. In a single gulp of a whale shark, there might be as many as 15 phyla of animals engulfed. That's about as many phyla of animals as there occur on all of the land and freshwater of the planet put together. As the census of marine life taking place over the last 10 years has made clear, you want to talk diversity? Talk ocean. Think ocean. The major divisions of life are basically there. And we see a fragment of that represented on the land. So much more to discover. The critters that we think of mainly swimming with lemon slices and butter, we need to get to know them better as creatures, as wildlife, as part of that blue machinery that keeps us alive, the creatures who shape the way the world works. We're a part of it, of course, but we, it seems, somehow in our nature to go out and extract wildlife from the land and from the sea. As hunter-gatherers, that's what we used to do, to feed ourselves. We can't do that on the land anymore. Can you imagine trying to feed 7 billion people with songbirds and little furry things? Or lions and tigers and eagles and owls? We'd run out long ago. We started agriculture as an alternative to catching wildlife that only could feed a certain number of people. And do you know what? It's true of the ocean, too. And it hasn't taken us 10,000 years to get there. It's taken us about 50 years to burn through the principal part of the living matrix of the ocean. It's so easy. You know, people say, well, it's all about our livelihoods. But from the standpoint of the creatures, it's all about a deadlyhood. Their lives sacrificed, and ours in the bargain when you think about the role that sharks play in the ocean, and they're disappearing through our actions, through our lack of understanding. The bluefin tuna, we know that their days are limited, and yet we still insist on killing them. What a concept. Maybe the last one will cost $1 million, not just $400,000, like one did recently. What is it about our appetite for wildlife from the sea? People who wouldn't eat songbirds think nothing of eating their wild counterparts that actually may live to be much longer than many of the creatures that we consume from the land. We learned with dolphins and whales that maybe there are limits to what we can take, and yet some nations are still taking them. This, an image from the Tokyo Fish Market whale meet last August. And yet most of the world has stepped in a different direction. We're on the cusp of a change for the good, and we're all a part of that process, all a part of the opportunity to make our lives really count. Kids ask me sometimes, what can I do to make a difference? And I say, well, first of all, you are alive at the most important time in history. You have a chance that nobody before could have, because now we know. Now we know what we couldn't know 50 years ago or 500 years ago, let alone 5,000 years ago. In all of human history, if you could choose a time to be born, stand up and say, I want to be born now. This is the time. Because it's the first time we really know what's going on with the technologies that give us this insight, this perspective, this ability to fly around the world and to communicate in a flash around the world what's going on, share the news. Now we have the capacity to get it. Maybe the last time we have such a good chance. The last time, perhaps, to save some of the creatures that are now right on the edge. I was a kid in high school when the last monk seal was seen in the Gulf of Mexico. Monk seals in the Gulf of Mexico? Are you kidding? People don't even know that they existed until 1952, the last one. So, won't the kids 50 years from now look at us and say, what were you thinking? There still were bluefin tuna, and you didn't do everything you could to keep them. There were still some blue whales. You did some things, but you didn't do quite enough. And the Gulf of Mexico, why can't we give back? Why can't we take care of what remains of what is healthy in the Gulf of Mexico, with areas that protect the breeding areas, feeding areas, the coral reefs that still remain in good shape? Well, these questions were much on my mind last April, just before the big spill took place in the Gulf of Mexico. I was one of the handful of lucky ducks who has been given a chance by an organization called TED, Technology, Entertainment, Design, to articulate a wish big enough to change the world. Well, if somebody asked you, what kind of wish would it be? I don't know what it would be, but I knew what mine would be. That was really easy. Justifying it and putting it in an 18-minute talk, that was the tough part. My wish was for people such as you, to use their powers to ignite a movement, to develop new technologies, to have expeditions, to do what it takes to create public awareness about the nature of the ocean, and to do everything we can to take care of it, to take care of the blue heart of the planet, through developing a network of hope spots, places that, if they're protected, may give cause for hope, that we will really make it through the tight spot we're now in. Chesapeake Bay is a hope spot. Monterey Bay is a hope spot. The Gulf of Mexico is a big blue hope spot. And people say, well, how much of the planet do you want put in parks and fish habitat and, safe havens for corals and things? How much? And my response is, well, let's just think about it. Some people have been thinking about it. This is a map that just shows where protected areas now exist. The Great Barrier Reef, the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a few places in the big map of the world. These are the places that are safe havens for fish. It's a fraction of 1%. Today, owing to some recent good news this year, 1.2% of the planet has some form of protection. This is what about 10% would look like. Still looks kind of sketchy if your job is to protect the blue heart of the planet. This is like 30%. Looks a little better, but think of this as your life support system. Think of this as the aircraft that is zooming through space, keeping us all alive. Is that all of it that you'd like to have intact? We have a job to do, and it starts with knowing what really counts. This is what really counts before anything else. Now, part of my wish was realized by the TEDsters, as they call themselves, putting together an expedition as Sam said in the beginning, if you want to change the way people think about the ocean, go get them in the ocean. And so we put together an expedition with the National Geographic and Lindblad expeditions to the Galapagos Islands. 100 people, entertainers, scientists, decision makers. It was a too small group. I'd rather take all of you out, like right now, and let's go get out where the action is and splash around for a few days. We should do this kind of thing often because it's a reality check on what really matters. I'd like to show the little video clip that came. It's just a trailer. Some of the people on board put up a substantial amount of money dedicated to developing protected areas in the sea. Some put up a commitment for education. Some said the Galapagos Islands, they need help in enforcing the places that are protected. And some said, we'll make a film about this expedition, about Mission Blue, about the concept that we need to have a movement, like the Earth Day movement, but more than that. This is just about all the interests, comprehensively, all the things that matter to people. We've had a lot of discussions over the last couple days about what matters to people about the ocean. Everybody can be, should be, a part of Mission Blue, to take care of the blue planet. Let's show that little video, please. 50 years ago, when I began exploring the ocean, it seemed at that time to be a Sea of Eden. But now we know we are now facing paradise lost.
This trip is absolutely brand new for Ted. We've never done anything like it before. The trip came about because of a wish that Ted granted Sylvia Earle.
I hope for your help to explore and protect the wild ocean in ways that will restore the health and, in so doing, secure hope for humankind.
Sylvia Earle has devoted her life to this passion of the oceans.
And the need for knowledge about all aspects of the environment, whether on the land or on the sea. I've always been a scientist. I am a scientist, but I've been transformed in part, I suppose, by having children and seeing that the places I knew as a child, I can't take them because they're gone.
The trip is a bet that if you bring together a group of really remarkable people who are well-resourced, some of the world's greatest marine scientists, some of the world's great storytellers, you put them together and you show them what's happening in the oceans, something incredible is going to happen.
I was raised with a great respect for nature, but I'd never added the ocean to that. And to be able to be in a place like the Galapagos, to actually get into the water and see some of the creatures that we're talking about has changed my life.
Getting people to not only understand intellectually, but to know with their hearts that we're so changing the way the world works that our future is at risk.
The type of fishing going on today is really wiping bluefin ecologically off the planet.
Whale meat being sold in these markets was really dolphin meat, and it was toxic.
There's around 100 million sharks caught every year, so this is a truly global problem.
We're literally sucking like a straw life right out of this planet.
And so the idea of hope spots, the idea of protected areas is like, whoa, you know? But it's got to be big and it's got to be real, and you got to have people with guns out there to protect it, because it sure as hell isn't going to be protected by wishful thinking or let's all go off and sing Kumbaya.
But if we wait another 50 years or even another 10 years, things we can do now will be gone.
There is no more tomorrow that we can avoid confronting.
Digital has declared a state of emergency because of the spill.
What's at stake for the environment as the oil begins to touch land?
And to me, crude oil ain't nothing but the devil.
Man is destroying the planet.
Just like the Bible says. In greed and time, you will destroy your own earth, and that's what's happening.
Scientists
scientists in Mississippi are trying to gauge the impact of the spill as it starts to spread into the prime habitat of the biggest fish in the Gulf.
So these animals are here to feed during this time, and this oil spill is right in their backyard.
That they're on death row.
If nothing else good comes of this major spill, it may be to wake up people to say we have to protect the Gulf.
There are real issues here of money and power.
It's life itself that the ocean is delivering. And we have been abusing the ocean. We haven't been caring for the ocean.
Why don't we write to 100 world leaders?
There must be some place where these forests of unique creatures can be safe.
And Sylvia's timing is perfect. This is that moment.
The government is on board.
And this bill is not only, we've heard it's the first in the United States, this is the first in the world.
We're 100 miles offshore in the Gulf of Mexico.
On corals, you're just looking at brown, gunky stuff.
A great grand finale for this version of the Alvin. We need every bit of insight that we can muster. The ocean is alive. Without the ocean, life on Earth simply would not exist.
I do not want to envision a world for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren that doesn't have orcas, that doesn't have hammerhead sharks, because we're all connected.
I'm here because Sylvia Earle is one of the most remarkable women on Earth.
She's the real thing. She's a person who has committed herself and everything that that commitment implies. And we need more of that.
We have the capacity to protect the systems that keep us alive.
We still have a chance, but now's the time.
I have one final thought. Of course, recognizing that all of us, every one of you, we all have power. The real trick is using it. Not to just know things intellectually, but to take that knowledge and act on it in ways that will make a difference. Ed Wilson, on his 80th birthday celebration in New York, reflected on the fact that it appears that we may be letting nature slip through our fingers. But the real problem may be that nature could let us slip through her fingers. We're the only creatures on the planet who have the ability to reflect on the past and anticipate the future and take action that will secure an enduring place for ourselves. Turtles have lived, some of them, through this same extraordinary time of change that we're celebrating at this conference. Orange roughy, some of them apparently can live for 200 years. They certainly have experienced change. Whales, too. Some may live more than a century. But they don't know why the change is taking place. And even if they did, they wouldn't know what to do about it. It's up to us. We do know why. We do know what to do about it. Can't wait to see what's going to happen next. Thank you.